Good evening, City of Memphis, Tennessee, and especially District 7. This is your Councilwoman, Michalyn-Easter, District 7, and I am here to be your host and also welcome you into the City Council Renaming Commission Town Hall, a first of a few. Just to let you all know, give you some background, the City Council Renaming Commission was established by the Memphis City Council in June of 2020 in order to provide recommendations and guiding principles to the City Council regarding the renaming of public streets, public parks, and public places in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, in my opinion, this is long overdue, but I feel that we in Memphis, citizens and electeds together, are now in a place where we can correct our mistakes in the past and move forward together. And this has come in one instance to look like the form and the shape of the Renaming Commission. And this is just the first of a few public sessions that will be held in order to make sure we get public review and input on what's going on in these commission sessions. And let me tell y'all, a lot of hard work, effort, and intentionality has been put into these recommendations. And this is just the first of a few, I'd like to reiterate, where the public can review these along with members from the commission, as well as submit feedback, questions, and commentary. So if you're wondering who is doing a lot of this hard work, this intentionality of making sure that we're on the right side of history in our city, I would like to introduce you to a couple of people. On our renaming commission, the chair, we have Kenya Bradshaw. Our vice chair is Mr. Sean Lynch. And the members are as follows: Pastor Ashton Alexander, Ms. Thelma Crivens, Luis Garcia, James Gilliland, Ben Jabbour, Dr. Andre Johnson, Ozzie Lewis Jr., Elder Roche Ragland, Reverend Johnson Salisbury Jr., Randall Tatum of the City of Memphis Engineering Department, Josh Whitehead of the Memphis and Shelby County Office of Planning and Development, myself, also with the definite, hard, and earnest support of Memphis City Council staff, Ms. Devin Thompson and Mr. Bryson Whitney. And now I would like to bring to you the chair of the City Council Renaming Commission, Ms. Kenya Bradshaw.
Good evening, Councilwoman. Thank you so much for your thorough overview and your welcoming of members of our community this evening. We are extremely excited to be able to share with you a draft of the work that we have been doing as a committee. We truly want this to be a process where we authentically engage our broader community as we envision the naming of our streets and parks that truly represent our broader community. But the format for our conversation this evening is for us to give you an overview of the process for which we have undertaken as a committee, and then share with you a draft of the recommendations that we will be sharing with the City Council in the upcoming weeks. We want to make sure that we are getting input from community members about the names and the changes that we are wanting to bring forward, and we are excited to have you all here with us tonight. We do have additional members of the renaming committee here with us this evening that will be participating in answering questions and sharing additional information with you. I want to start with giving an overview and talk a little bit about our methodology that was utilized for us in renaming, and then also share the names of the list that we are suggesting for us this evening. So I'm sharing a little overview. Our public spaces, such as our streets and parks, allow our government to honor and memorialize individuals in our community, places, and events that contribute to the political, social, and economic growth of our city, state, or country. They also provide an opportunity for a political jurisdiction to communicate to its citizens topics or issues that the jurisdiction deems important or unifying. Historically, prominent public places in Memphis, Tennessee, especially monuments, were closely aligned with the narratives of slavery, the Confederacy, and Jim Crow era white supremacy. These symbols reinforce the importance of racial segregation and Southern post-Civil War society. Beginning in 2013, the Memphis City Council began removing symbolic representation of racial divisions in the city. In that year, 3 parks named for Confederate officers in general were renamed: Confederate Park, now Memphis Park; Jefferson Davis Park, now Mississippi River Park; and Nathan Bedford Forrest Park, now Health Sciences Park. 2 statues that remained in the park, Jefferson Davis in Memphis Park and Nathan Bedford Forrest in Health Sciences Park, were removed in 2017 after the sale of the parks or the interests of the parks to private nonprofit corporations. This racial reckoning with streets, parks, parks, and statues that symbolize divisiveness is not only occurring in Memphis, but in cities all across southern states and actually all across our nation, where we are having a determination of where do we want to stand and what do we want to celebrate and how do we want to recognize the Confederacy in our community. The Memphis City Council sought to embrace public spaces, streets, parks, and places that unified us as a community rather than dividing us as a city. It seeks to ensure that the request to rename streets, parks, and places acknowledge and embrace a common destiny, one that honors the contributions of all citizens, responds to the dynamic changes, and acknowledges the importance of the varied interests and our diversity as a city. On July 21st, 2021, the Memphis City Council approved a resolution of the Memphis City Council establishing an advisory committee regarding City of Memphis streets, parks, and place names. This ordinance number was 5759. The ordinance amends chapters 2 and 12 of the City of Memphis Codes of Ordinance by giving the Memphis City Council renaming powers related to streets, parks, and places that are named within the City of Memphis. The ordinance calls for the creation of an advisory body, as Councilwoman Easter Thomas shared. The City Council Renaming Commission was charged to make 3 recommendations to the council: a set of guiding principles that would govern the renaming recommendations from the public; 2, a process that citizens can use in recommending renaming a street, park, or place; and 3, a list of streets, parks, and places that should be renamed. In addition, the ordinance requires public involvement in all aspects of the renaming process. That is part of why we are here with you all this evening, to be able to share with you some of the information and receive your input, including a public education process in which we have begun. In each of our meetings, we intentionally brought out an education component, and that committee was led by Dr. Andre Johnson and also Ms. Thelma Crivens, where we reviewed information from other cities, historical information about Memphis, the process for which we were renaming streets, and who streets in our community were named after. We specifically wanted to look at renaming recommendations that looked at public processes and proposed recommendations across the country. Now we want to go forth and share with you a list of the City Council Renaming Commission's process and a summary of the streets that we were moving forward, the individuals who they were named after, and the proposed name or the proposed next step on the process. Currently, the first one is Andrew Jackson, and the street is Jackson Avenue. The proposed name is Odyssey Avenue, and it is one we want to call out because it is in recognition of the Trail of Tears. As you all know, Jackson Avenue follows the path for which the Trail of Tears took, where the U.S. was transporting both Native American and Africans out of this area and across our country. We did reach out to the Native American representation in our community about this as part of our engagement strategy. and the proposed renaming of Jackson Avenue is Odyssey Avenue. The second individual was Lucius Lamar. The street that corresponds with them is Lamar Avenue. And what we are proposing the name change for that street to be Vanguard Avenue. The next one is the Battle of Bull Run and Manassas. That street would be Manassas Street between Union Avenue and Madison. We are proposing that that street name change to Black Lives Matter Street. Number 4 is John James Audubon, and we are proposing that the accompanying Audubon Park be changed in honor of Dr. Miriam DaCosta Willis to Dr. DaCosta Willis Park. The next one is Dr. William E. Butler, and Butler Park and Butler Avenue are the corresponding parks and avenues, and changed to Blackman Park and Blackman Avenue in honor of Miss Joyce Blackman. Number 6 is Thomas Jonathan Stonewall Jackson, and this is Stonewall Street. Because this is a residential community, our recommendation is that those who reside in the community would bring forth a naming recommendation. The next street, PGT Beauregard and Beauregard Avenue. Our recommendation is similarly that because this is a residential community, that a name be brought forth from members of that community. Next is the additional section of Manassas Avenue that will be a part of the first Battle of Bull Run. Again, this street is also a residential community, and so we are bringing forth the recommendation that it be informed by the surrounding residents of that community, but we are requesting that the Manassas Avenue be renamed. Number 9 is Dixie Road. Again, it is a residential community, and we are recommending a process for which we would engage the residents of that street to be able to participate in renaming their street. The next is the Bellevue Tennis Center at Jesse Turner Park. The proposed rename is Teresa Jones Tennis Center in honor of Judge Teresa Jones. Number 11, the Geisman Community Center at Geisman Park. The proposed name rechanging is the Memphis International Community Center. The next one, number 12, is 4th Street from Crump Avenue to Bill Street. The proposed name would be Ida B. Wells Barnett Street. And number 13, this in representation for John Overton and E.H. Crump in Overton Park and E.H. Crump Park. What we are asking is that there will be place markers that are placed beside the statues of both John Overton and E.H. Crump that give a comprehensive representation of both gentlemen. In addition to this, the recommendations that we will we're sending, each of them have a comprehensive historical analyses that was done. I would like to thank our committee member, Ms. Thelma Crivens, who has done an exhaustive job with the research committee to be able to lead the process, to be able to have full analyses of each of these streets that will have corresponding information to those for each of the names that was presented before you. Ms. Crivens or any other member, before we move forward, would you like to chime in?
Of course. Thank you, Ms. Bradshaw. I would just like to explain the methodology that I and the research committee went through in order to make these recommendations. The commission first conducted historical research on existing streets or place names to determine if they should be reconsidered for a replacement. The names fell into 2 categories. 1, streets, parks, and places named for Confederate officers, leaders, and sympathizers. And 2, streets, parks, and places named for named for public figures or other individuals that actively or publicly promoted racist ideology. This latter category included elected and appointed local, state, or national government officials and local, state, or national non-governmental leaders and influential individuals. The time period that we covered were individuals or events who primarily were active during the time period between 1819 and 1964 to 65. This time period is inclusive of the founding of Memphis, the practice of slavery, the Civil War, the period of Reconstruction, and the era of Jim Crow laws and customs. The cutoff date of 64, 65 it corresponds with the year that the United States government began enacting legislation prohibiting discrimination on a nationwide basis. Since there are over 9,000 roadways and over 160 parks and places in Memphis, we decided to limit the historical research to major streets and parks, which are the streets and parks that are most recognizable by the public. In technical terms, a major street or roadway is classified by the city's Division of Engineering as arterial roadways. They include streets such as Union Avenue, Poplar Avenue, Winchester Avenue, and Jackson Avenue. Arterial roadways are high-volume roadways that feed into the interstate highway system or into other freeways. These roadways frequently are named for prominent individuals or events in the city, state, or nation. And then the major parks are technically regional parks based on the classification system of the city's Division of Parks and Neighborhoods. These parks serve the entire city and surrounding areas as opposed to serving a specific neighborhood or community. And they include Overton Park, Audubon Park, Martin Luther King Park, and Shelby Farms Park. And given the importance of the Memphis riverfront to the tourism industry and to citywide celebrations in Memphis, parks along the riverfront were included in the research as well. And they include Mud Island Park, Greenbelt Park, Ashton Copper Park, Butler Park, Chickasaw Heritage Park, Crump Park, Martyrs Park, Tom Lee Park, and Vance Park. And based on our research and what we described as just described as the methodology, we wrote a brief biography of individuals or places after whom these streets or parks were named. Those histories included both the accomplishments for which they were honored and their history of racist ideology, if any. And the list that we came up with is the list that, the list that Ms. Bradshaw read to you are the recommendations. The list of the names based on the information that I just provided, there were 15 names, a total of 15 names that we looked at as possible replacement names. The ones that we chose were the ones that Ms. Bradshaw just read to you. And although the commission did not vote to rename Overton Park or E.H. Crump Park, it did recommend placing markers next to their statutes to show that both their contributions to the city and their history as slave owners are segregationists. So that's the methodology that we followed when we developed a list of 15 names that we felt that we should review to determine whether they should be replaced. And then the commission voted on the names that Ms. Bradshaw read to you earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cribbins. We want to make sure that we hear from members of the community. I want to just go over the names one more time before we go into a Q&A, so we can make sure that we are sharing that And then we will also explain the process for how community members can engage. We have a couple of questions. Please feel free to post your questions on either the vehicle that you're joining in, whether it be YouTube or Facebook, so that we can answer those. Again, street and park for E.H. Crump, we are proposing a historical truth marker. For John Overton, street and park, we are also proposing a historical marker. For James, actually, that's not right. Let me go pull the list, because this was the list of all of the streets that we were proposing. And I have them. For Street Jackson Avenue, recommending the proposed rename is Odyssey Avenue. Lamar Avenue, recommendation is Vanguard Avenue. Manassas Street, for the segment between Union Avenue and Madison Avenue, the proposed name is Black Lives Matter Street. For Audubon Park, the proposed name is DeCosta Willis Park. For the current name Butler Park and Butler Avenue, the proposed name of Blackman Park and Blackman Avenue. For the current name street Stonewall Street, the initial recommendation is to be supported by engaging the surrounding residential community. The Beauregard Avenue, similarly, recommendation to be supported by the surrounding residential community. Manassas Avenue, for the section extending between Union Avenue and Madison, the recommendation is to engage the community for their participation. The next one is Dixie Road, is to receive a recommendation from residents on that street. The current proposed Bellevue Tennis Center at Jesse Turner Park to be renamed for Teresa Jones Tennis Center. Geisman Community Center at Geisman Park to renamed Memphis International Community Center. Current name street 4th Street to be renamed Ida B. Wells Barnett Street. And I started with the markers for John Overton and E.H. Crump. We have received a few questions from the audience. Would like to ask either Councilman Lynch or committee member who is chairing our community engagement committee, Mr. Garcia, to answer. For the residents who live on a street such as Stonewall, how would they engage in the process to be able to to submit recommendations for their street's name rechange?
Yes, Madam Chair. Thank you. So we do have an application form, a renaming application form, which they can go ahead and fill out. And we also have an email where they can actually email us at ccrc@memphistn.gov. If they have any questions, any comments, any suggestions, or if they want to get together and go ahead and fill out an application form for those living in Stonewall, they can just go ahead and fill it out and send it over that way.
Thank you, sir. And we had a question in particular about there is a school that resides with one of the same names as Manassas School. The purview of the city council nor of the committee is to make recommendations about the changing of a school. We will share the information both with the Shelby County School Board and their representative and superintendent, Dr. George Ray, and then they will move forward with whatever process that they would desire for to be able to be in line or for their process. But that is not in the purview of this committee. And there is an additional question. There was an additional question around, will the information be shared in a public list? Yes, there is on the website that Mr. Garcia shared, the public list will be there that you can be able to engage with. One piece that I want to flag, because I've seen a couple of comments around the committee, all of us are volunteer members who have given of our time freely. There have been no city funds allocated to this process. We have all been engaging for free over the course of the last few months to be able to undertake this, which we felt like was an honor to be of service to our community. And then the research and analysis will be available for all of the residents to be able to review so that they can be able to see the process that we undertook as well. I'm going through and looking at additional questions so that there was a question around the timing for which this will be sent to the city council. So the charge for the committee, our current committee ends in October. Our plan is to be able to do additional community engagement meetings between now and then to be able to get additional input from members of the community. And then at the conclusion in October, we want to present our recommendations to the city council.
Madam Chair, I was wondering if we could pin the email where people can go ahead and send their comments also and their application. Could we pin that in the comment section?
Yes, Jeremy, is that possible? There is a question on how residents will be contacted. So we are working with the Memphis City Council to be able to send information out to residents who reside on the streets that are part of the name. And then Mr. Garcia can talk a little bit about his community engagement strategies and the plan that the Community Engagement Committee have come up with, and then including working with community development corporations and neighborhood organizations.
Yes.
Ms. Bradshaw, can I also respond? There's a question about that a person was surprised to hear about John James Audubon. And I want to read the comments that we have on Mr. Audubon. And we indicate that he was an internationally known naturalist and artist who documented the birds of America in his famous book, The Birds of America. Audubon was also a slave owner and considered both Blacks and Native Americans as inferior. He was a strong opponent of the abolitionist movement, the major movement organized by Black and white Americans to end slavery in the United States. So that's why he's on the list.
And just to repeat, all that information will be available on the website, along with the street renaming. That's all available, all our research.
Right.
There is a comment around C.M. Gooch Park and Pool, and shares additional pieces around the history of the park when it was dedicated to the city in 1957 as a park for African Americans. This is an opportunity for community members to be able to submit additional information so that for streets, parks, or areas that they would like to be recognized. So as Mr. Garcia shared, we have a form that members can be able to fill out that so that they can be able to submit that information to the council. Mr. Garcia, did you want to share a little bit about the community engagement plans?
Sure. So we hope this is going to be the first of at least 2 more meetings where everybody can go ahead and just participate. We're going to make sure that everybody gets informed of the date and the link for people to join. I'm actually happy that people did join via Facebook. I'm not seeing many on YouTube, but it's maybe the way this is panned out. But we also have contacted, emails separately from different community members. We've gone to churches. We've contacted individually as a group, as a council ourselves, as a committee. I'm sorry. And there's information on the City of Memphis website.
Thank you so much, Mr. Garcia. Trying to see if we have any. Ms. Jeff, although members of our committee are not a part of the city council and don't work for the city, I will say that the process, Councilwoman Easton Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, if there is street speed bump request, the person can submit it for 311, can submit the request for their neighborhood for that. And then there's a question around, were there any streets or parks in South Memphis listed and not selected? So one of the things that we want to flag is that we know that there, as Ms. Crivens shared, there are over 9,000 streets in the city. This process did not serve to be able to cover an exhaustive list. So as she shared, what we prioritized were those that were streets that were named after members of the Confederacy, segregationists, and also streets that were submitted from our emergency services, with both police and fire department, that were impediments to them being able to effectively serve our members of our community. We do believe that over time, the city council can do an even thorough examination of this, but we believe that this provides a solid foundation for them to be able to begin to address streets that represent more divisiveness in our community. Ms. Crivens or Mr. Lynch or Ms. Garcia, any additional pieces to add on that?
I would add that, as you said, there's 9,000 streets and parks. If we did not list them, and there's anything in South Memphis or any other neighborhood, that's why the email's there. That's why the suggestion there from the community. We have already had several suggestions. People would love to have more here in the next month and a half that we have left.
And let me also repeat that we limited the streets to arterial roadways. And those are the major streets. And I think, Crump and Lamar are parts of those streets are, well, definitely Crump in South Memphis. So we did identify some streets, but we did, as Mr. Lynch explained, we did have to confine it. And the way we confined it was to limit it to arterial roadways. Ms. Bradshaw, I see a question. I thought you would answer it. Briefly discuss what you hope to see come of the work.
Thank you so much, Ms. Crivens, which you could have effectively answered it as well. As a chairwoman of this committee, I'm hoping that we lay a foundation for our community to take a regular examination of how do we represent the citizens of our city. Today I went back and refreshed myself on the demographics of our city when we were founded in 1819, and then looked at who are we and what are our demographics in 2021, and they are fundamentally different. And so when we think about who our streets were named after, our streets were named after predominantly white men who were landowners at that time, or who had contributed to the founding of our community. While those people do need to be remembered and recognized, we also should give opportunities for us to be able to recognize the diversity and the diverse contributions. One of the things that I'm really proud of around this committee is our recognition of women and renaming parks after women in our community. We have a disproportionate number of our major parks that are named after men. And how do we have an opportunity to be able to honor the contributions of all of the members of our society and be able to ensure that the places we gather, the streets on which we drive, are really a representation of all of our members of our community. Any other members would like to chime in around that?
Well, I will say that Mr. Garcia didn't chime in. We were asked if we needed any additional volunteers, and I would say that Mr. Garcia would be, at this point in the process, needs the most help.
Yeah, we could use volunteers. Please go ahead and email us at ccrc@memphis.tennessee.gov if you want to go ahead and contribute your time towards this cost, because it is important.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. And Ms. Ballard is one of our amazing citizens in our community and has done a lot of work. So I know that she will be an excellent addition to help our community engagement outreach body to be able to make sure that we're doing a good job around that. So we are excited to get some of your time, Ms. Ballard. And there's a question around a public library renamed. So this process, we will have to investigate if the committee process allows for for us to be able to rename public libraries. I'm not sure that it is currently in the charge and our ability.
Right.
Ms. Crivens?
No, I agree with you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Look, the two lawyers on our team are very good of being able to help me make sure that we are not speaking incorrectly. So, Mr. Red Wing, that process would still have to go to the city council on being able to ask for a rename of one of the public libraries.
I would only add, go ahead and submit it formally so we can take it up at the council.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. And we thank you all for such a nice comments to thank the members for the time that they have volunteered. We really do appreciate each of them. So for at least 3 hours every 2 to 3 weeks, we've gotten together to be able to review materials, being able to look at research, review names, and review the historical pieces that we will post online to be able to, and have really, I would say, robust discussions about people in our community who have both done positive contributions and they also had negative contributions. And how do we think about how we should both honor and how we should think about street renaming. So we have done a lot of that dialogue in the committee, which we're all open to the public to be able to participate in. And when we had public comments in many of those meetings, and we invite you all to also out to our next meeting and in our community meetings as well. So we just thank you all for that, and thank all of the members for the time that they have committed. And another reminder, the CCRC application form is on the City Council website, along with a summary of the list of proposed names. And so for Ms. Crivens, do you want to recap on next steps? And then we'll turn it back over to bring Councilwoman Easter Thomas back in.
Thank you. I think for next steps, Mr. Bradshaw, you wanted me to talk about the renaming principles and the renaming guidelines.
Yes, ma'am.
And the renaming principles partly answers the question, what do we want out of this? Because one of the asks of the ordinance is that we develop some principles that form the basis for renaming recommendations. And we developed 4 principles that we think will be important to unify this city. The first principle is that streets, parks, and place names should promote values shared by the Memphis community, such as respect, unity, and diversity. 2, naming preferences initiated by neighborhood groups should promote and preserve important neighborhood values, such as collective responsibility, friendship, and sharing. 3, streets, parks, and places named for individuals or events should reflect contributions or achievements by Memphians from all sectors of society, including activities or events related to public service and business development, religion and philanthropy, social justice and social support, music, art, and city life, neighborhood identity, and state and national identity. And finally, final selection of street, park, and place names shall be based on the best interests of the city, including but not limited to interests related to the renaming principles, planning and engineering concerns, and public comments. Those are the principles that we developed that we feel should guide any proposed renaming for the city. Now, as far as the application process is concerned, as has been stated, the process is included on the website under, where is it located? On the city of Memphis's the City Council website and Councilwoman Easter Thomas's website.
Yes.
Okay, and there are 3 basic requirements under the application. First, the individual you're recommending for renaming. The individual must be deceased. However, a living individual may be recommended if the purpose is to honor a philanthropic donation. Second, members of the public must adhere to the ordinance requirements to provide a detailed reason, if any, why a name should be replaced and why the replacement name is preferred. Lastly, recommendations must reflect public support. And public support can be a petition that you gathered, could be letters of support. It could be any way in which you show the city council and the commission that this particular recommendation has widespread support, and not just from 1 or 2 individuals. So those are the basic requirements. Other requirements are on the website with the application, but the basic one is that the person must be deceased unless the living person is honored for a philanthropic donation. You must provide a detailed information on the person that you're recommending to be renamed, and there must be public support for the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Crivens. We want to invite back Councilwoman Easter Thomas. Thank you for the charge and the support that you've provided from the council, and for the support to the committee. And we want to allow you to have the final words.
Thank you so much, Chair Bradshaw and Ms. Crivens and Mr. Garcia and Mr. Lynch. It's evident that you all have put so much fidelity, fullness, intentionality, and just thoroughness in this effort in so short a time. And citizens of Memphis, I just want to remind you that, and I'm sure you've gotten this over the last 40 years, words matter. And how we remember things matters as well. And what we choose to prioritize and to put forth and continue on into our city's history also matters. And I just want to thank you again, Renaming Commission, for the proposed changes in the foundation that you've set, the stability of it. Also being able to fully rationalize and explain to us, me included, on the reasons why you're submitting these different suggestions and proposals, and the way that Ms. Crivens explained the principles as well. I think that's a grand way to look at naming park, places, and streets, but also on how we go through our communities and the work that we do and the way that we do it with others. But also, citizens of Memphis, I want you to know that everyone on this committee, every council member had the opportunity to select a representative to go onto this renaming commission. And I just want to say that I am proud of all 13 selections that have made it upon this renaming commission. They have stuck to the work. They have been steadfast with it and will submit proposals that upon council approval or revisit or rejection will still show the camaraderie and the ability and willingness to move forward together as a city. So thank you all. I just want to say thank you again. Also, just putting forth that this is the beginning of this effort. This is what has been submitted in for proposals so far. However, as the chair and others have shared, please, if you see something that you think should be submitted for consideration, please be sure to send it either via email or submitting the application showing public support. And that application can be found on my council page as well. And I encourage all residents just to take a look and to go back over those 4 principles that Ms. Crivens went through. Does it reflect the values that we want to promote in our cities, in our city, on our streets, in our communities, and in our neighborhood places? Also, I charge you Memphians to look back over this video, look back at the proposed changes, think about your communities and your areas as well, but also to share this information. We're all citizens in the city. We all play a part, making sure that everyone knows that we, as well as the commission, are open to feedback. Definitely submit your suggestions, your commentaries. We heard a lot of great questions on today, and even some asking about future proposals. Please submit those so that those can be heard probably before or after the October submission to the City Council. But I would like to thank our Renaming Commission for the work that you have done, for being able to fully explain that to our public on today. And remember, this is just the first of few public sessions. Also, thank you to CIYN for being able to put this together for us in the public, and also to our lovely council staff members of Ms. Devin Thompson and Mr. Bryson Whitney. So as I leave you all this evening and we close this effort, and CIYN, if you could bring everyone back in to the camera shot. Just want to make sure that, all right, want to make sure we got everybody back in on this closing note. Thank you all once again. I think the public is better prepped for the work that you have been doing. And thank you, Ms. Bradshaw, for your leadership on this and everyone's steadfastness, and that we can keep going forward and making sure that our perspective and our historical awareness is also blended into what we value and what we want to see carried forth in our city to come. So thank you all. Good evening. I hope to see plenty of suggestions and commentary in our emails and applications. And you all definitely enjoy your Monday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.